the river that chases its own current. Picture a river under a full moon, its surface shimmering like liquid silver. It winds through a forest, restless and relentless, carving paths through stone, bending around ancient trees. But if you listen closely, there's a tension in its flow, a quiet desperation. It races forward as though fleeing something, its currents churning over rocks, splashing against banks, never pausing long enough to see its own reflection. We are taught to admire rivers for their strength, their persistence. Yet we rarely ask, why does the river never stop? What if its ceaseless motion isn't a sign of power, but of fear? Fear of the stillness that would force it to confront the depths beneath its surface, the silt, the shadows, the creatures that dwell where light cannot reach. The Greek philosopher Heraclitus once said, "No man steps in the same river twice." We interpret this as a metaphor for change, but what if it's also a warning? A river in perpetual motion cannot know itself. Its water is always new, always escaping. And so it is with us. Modern life has become a river without banks, careers that demand endless growth, social media feeds that scroll into infinity, notifications that pull us into a current of distraction. We mistake motion for meaning, productivity for purpose. But beneath the surface, a question lingers. What are we running from? Centuries after Heraclitus, Plato imagined the soul as a chariot pulled by two winged horses. One horse strains toward the light, craving truth and beauty. The other writhes in the dark, driven by hunger and fear. The charioteer, our conscious self, exhausts himself, trying to steer these opposing forces. We are all that charioteer, forever negotiating between the parts of ourselves we love and the parts we shame. The poet Rumi called this the split self, the version of you that laughs at parties, and the one that sits alone at 3 a.m., wondering if you've ever been truly known. Consider Alex, a name we'll give to a face you might recognize. Alex fills their days with meetings, their nights with podcasts and playlists, their weekends with trips and timelines. Their phone buzzes like a heartbeat, but in rare moments of silence, waiting for a train, staring at a ceiling fan, Alex feels it, a hollow ache, a whisper that says, "This is not the life you were meant to live." They dismiss it, of course. They open another app, book another trip, chase another sunrise, but the whisper grows louder. Because here's the secret no one tells you. You cannot outrun what you carry inside. The river believes it's escaping the darkness by staying in motion. But in reality, it's only avoiding the truth. The darkness is not in the water. It is the water. Every unresolved regret, every unloved part of yourself flows with you. And the more you run, the heavier it becomes. You grow tired, not because life is too demanding, but because you've been fighting a war with your own reflection. Yet there's a moment, a choice, when the river could choose differently. Imagine it slowing just for a breath, pooling in a quiet eddy. Here, the silt settles. The water grows clear. For the first time, the river sees itself, not as fragments of current, but as something whole, something alive. What are you refusing to see? What might happen if you stopped running? Not to sleep or surrender, but to finally meet the self you've been fleeing. The answer is not in the chaos of the current, but in the courage to be still. But why do we fear stillness? To answer that, we must venture into the cave of our own shadows. The cave of shadows. Imagine a traveler lost in a labyrinth of stone. He carries a torch, its flame trembling as he hurries through the dark. Behind him, a shadow flickers. A silhouette just beyond the fire's reach always steps behind. Never closer, never farther. The traveler quickens his pace, heart pounding, convinced the shadow is a predator, a thief, a ghost. He does not realize he is running from the one thing he cannot escape, himself. We all carry torches. Yours might be the glow of a phone screen, the buzz of a packed calendar, or the chatter of a crowded room. These flames keep us moving, convincing us that busyness is safety. But what if the light we cling to is the very thing that blinds us? The traveler's cave is cold, ancient, its walls carved by time into jagged ribs. His breath fogs the air. Each step echoes. He tells himself he's searching for an exit, but deep down, he fears what might happen if he stops. The shadow follows, a silent companion. Sometimes, when the torchlight wavers, he catches glimpses of it. A hunched figure, hands outstretched, face obscured. He runs faster, but caves have a way of teaching patience. After hours or days, time bends here. The torch sputters, the flame gutters, then dies. Darkness swallows him, and in that void, the traveler does something he's never dared. He sits. He waits. He listens. Plato once wrote of prisoners chained in a cave, mistaking shadows on a wall for reality. We are those prisoners, our torches, distraction, achievements, curated identities, cast illusions we worship as truth. We scroll through highlight reels of others' lives and wonder why ours feels hollow. We chase promotions, likes, and milestones only to find the shadow still there, waiting in the quiet. Think of Clara, a name we'll borrow for a story you might know. Clara stays late at the office, volunteers for every project, fills her weekends with errands. When friends ask how she's doing, she laughs, too busy to think. But at night, when her apartment is silent, she feels it, the shadow. It whispers in the cracks between productivity. What if you're not enough? What if they find out? So she buys a new course, joins another club, dates another stranger. The torch burns brighter. The shadow stays. Carl Jung called this the shadow self, the parts of us we exile, shame, grief, vulnerability, rage. We bury them, yes, but burial does not mean death. The shadow grows in the dark, fed by our denial. It becomes the ghost in our periphery, the itch in our bones. And so we run, not from some external monster, but from the truth that we are both prisoner and cave. Here's the secret the traveler learns. The shadow is not chasing you, it is leading you. When the torch dies, his eyes adjust. The cave is not a tomb, it's a mirror. The figure he feared steps forward, not as a threat, but as a guide. Its face is his own, weathered by years of running. Its hands hold everything he's disowned, forgotten dreams, unshed tears, the child who still believes in magic. The cave, it turns out, is not a place to escape. It's a place to meet. Every crack in its walls, every drip of water, every echo is a part of the traveler he's refused to name. The shadow was never an enemy. It was an invitation. What torches are you carrying? What happens when the battery dies, the crowd disperses, the accolades lose their glow? The cave asks only one thing of us: sit, listen, stop conflating light with truth. The traveler rises, but he does not relight the torch. Instead, he walks with the shadow hand in hand. The cave does not shrink, it expands. Strange how darkness can feel like mercy when you stop fighting it. We spend our lives fearing the cave, not realizing it is the womb of our becoming. The shadow is not a flaw, it is the unlit path to wholeness. But how do we move forward without a flame? To answer, we must learn the alchemy of stillness. The alchemy of stillness picture: an ocean at midnight. Waves rise like black mountains crashing under a sky torn open by lightning. The sea is fury, chaos, a roar that drowns thought. But storms do not last. When the winds still, the waves settle into gentle swells. The surface smooths, and for the first time, the water mirrors the stars, not as broken fragments, but as a perfect, boundless sky. This is the alchemy of stillness. The moment chaos becomes clarity, noise becomes music, and motion becomes meaning. We often confuse stillness with stagnation. We fear it as a void, an emptiness to be filled. But what if stillness is not the absence of life, but its essence? What if, like the sea, we are meant to hold storms, not become them? Centuries ago, the Buddha taught the middle way, a path neither indulging in excess nor suffocating in austerity. It was a radical idea, that peace is found not by fleeing suffering or clutching joy, but by resting in the space between. Similarly, Taoist sages spoke of Wu Wei, effortless action, not passivity, but movement aligned with the natural order. A bird does not try to fly, it surrenders to the air. A river does not force its path, it follows the pull of the earth. Stillness, then, is not inertia. It is the art of listening to the rhythm already humming within you. Let's name her Lynn, a pianist you might imagine. For years, Lynn played with ferocity, fingers hammering keys as if her worth depended on every note. She chased standing ovations, viral videos, the hollow gleam of trophies, but the louder the applause, the quieter her soul became. One night, after a recital, she sat alone on the stage. The hall was silent, the piano lid closed. In that emptiness, she heard it. A melody, faint but insistent, rising not from her hands but from her bones. It was raw, imperfect, alive. For the first time, she played not to impress, but to exist. The music that night was not performed, it was discovered. Modern life treats stillness as a problem to solve. We pathologize boredom, monetize mindfulness, and cram silence with podcasts. Yet, in our desperation to do, we forget how to be. Neuroscientists reveal that the brain's default mode network, the circuitry active in rest, is where creativity, self-awareness, and emotional processing ignite. Stillness, in other words, is not idle. It is the forge where fragments of experience are woven into wisdom. Here lies the alchemy. To move with purpose, you must first become still. The storm does not cease because you command it. It settles because you stop fighting. The Japanese art of kintsugi repairs broken pottery with gold, not to hide cracks, but to honor them. Likewise, when Lynn stopped fleeing her imperfections, the missed notes, the shaky breath, she found a music more compelling than perfect. Her vulnerability became her bridge to others. Return to the sea. In its stillness, it does not cease to be powerful. It cradles shipwrecks and nurtures coral. It reflects galaxies. It holds. This is the lesson. Stillness is not the end of motion, but its source. A dancer pauses mid-leap not to fall, but to gather the force needed to soar. What might you hear in your own stillness? The answer will not come as a slogan or a 5-step plan. It will feel more like a memory, an ache for the self you were before the world told you to run. Lynn still performs, but differently. She leaves space between notes, lets the silence sing too. Audiences cry, not because she plays flawlessly, but because she plays humanly. The storm remains, fear, doubt, ambition, but now she knows it is not her master. It is the sea that carries her home. Stillness is not a destination. It is a return, a recalibration. The moment you stop trying to outswim your chaos and instead let it settle, you begin to see you are not the storm, you are the sky it moves through. And in that clarity, an ancient alchemy begins. The fragments of self reunite. The mirror of wholeness. Imagine a mirror shattered into 1,000 fragments. Each shard reflects a different face, versions of you fractured by time, trauma, and the stories you've been told. One piece holds the child you once were, laughing in a sunlit field. Another traps the rage you swallowed when the world said, "Be quiet." A third glimmers with the grief you buried, thinking it too heavy to carry. For years you've turned away from this broken mirror, fearing what it might reveal. But what if the cracks are not flaws, but bridges? We spend lifetimes curating a self that fits into families, careers, cultures. Yet deep down, we sense the dissonance. The roles we play rarely align with the truths we feel. What if wholeness isn't about fixing the brokenness, but reclaiming it? Let's call her Elena. For years, Elena wore her grief like a secret. When her mother died, she packed away the photos, avoided the park they once walked, drowned the silence with work. But grief is a stubborn tide. It seeped into her dreams as storms, her relationships as walls, her body as a weight no yoga pose could lift. One autumn evening, she found herself standing at the edge of that forbidden park, leaves crunching underfoot. Instead of fleeing, she sat. She let the memories rise, her mother's laugh, the way she hummed off-key, the last rasp of her breath. Elena didn't heal that day, she integrated. The grief didn't shrink. It became a lens, clarifying her capacity to love, to ache, to endure. Carl Jung believed the path to wholeness lies in confronting the shadow, the parts of ourselves we exile as unacceptable. But the shadow is not merely our darkness, it's also our disowned brilliance, the artist who hides behind spreadsheets, the leader who muffles her voice to avoid conflict. When Elena stopped running, she didn't just embrace her grief. She rediscovered her mother's resilience in her own hands, her own laughter. The mirror's fragments, once scattered, began to align. A mosaic is not a mirror. It doesn't hide its fractures. It celebrates them. Each piece, a different color, texture, story, is essential to the whole. The Japanese practice of kintsugi fills cracks with gold, not to erase breaks, but to honor them as part of the object's history. Likewise, wholeness is not the absence of contradiction. It's the acceptance that you can be both shattered and radiant, fierce and gentle, lost and found. Nietzsche wrote, "Become who you are, not who you should be, but who you are, the self that exists beneath shoulds and shame." This is the alchemy of integration. When the perfectionist befriends her procrastination, the caregiver honors his anger. The achiever makes peace with her fatigue. The mirror, once a symbol of fracture, becomes a map of your becoming. Think of the moon. It waxes and wanes, shows scars and luminous plains. We call it full only once a month, yet we never dismiss its phases as incomplete. Why then do we demand constant fullness of ourselves? Elena returns to the mirror now, not to judge its cracks, but to marvel. The child, the griever, the artist, the warrior, all gaze back, not as enemies, but as allies. The river from part. One flows here too, quiet and deep. In its reflection, Elena sees not fragments, but a constellation. And in that acceptance, dawn breaks, not as an end, but a beginning. The dawn after 1,000 nights. Imagine a field after a storm. The air is thick with the scent of petrichor, the soil still trembling from the sky's fury. But now the clouds part. A sliver of gold spills over the horizon, touching the rain-soaked wildflowers, dandelions bowing under droplets, poppies shaking open their crimson petals, Queen Anne's lace glowing like a constellation. This is the dawn that arrives not despite the storm, but because of it. The light does not erase the night. It transforms it into a testament. You survived. Now begin. We often speak of new beginnings as if they require a clean slate. But what if true rebirth lies in embracing the mud, the cracks, the scars? What if the dawn is not a reset, but a reunion with the self you've always been beneath the running? Jean-Paul Sartre argued that authenticity is the courage to claim our freedom and its weight, to stop hiding behind roles, excuses, or borrowed dreams. It is not a destination, but a daily choice to stand in the raw, unedited truth of who you are. This is the gift of the dawn. After 1,000 nights of fleeing, you finally turn toward the light within the wound, as Rumi urged, and find it. Has sculpted you into something vast, something unbreakable. Let's name him Amir. For years, Amir lived as a shadow. He wore the suits his father praised, silenced his love for painting, buried his queerness beneath a wedding ring. But in the quiet hours, he'd sketch in stolen notebook swirls of color that felt more like prayer than art. One morning, after a year of therapy and sleepless nights, he stood before his family, voice trembling. This is not a confession, it is an introduction. The aftermath was not kind. Relationships frayed, old worlds crumbled, yet in their place something bloomed. A studio with sunlit easels, a community of chosen kin, a life that ached with honesty. Wildflowers do not grow in curated gardens. They rise from cracks in sidewalks, scorched earth, abandoned battlefields. Their roots thrive in what others call broken. Amir's art, too, became wilder. He painted his grief into murals, his loneliness into landscapes, his joy into abstract riots of gold. Collectors called it raw, but he knew the truth. It was the first language of a self no longer at war. Neuroscience reveals that memory is not a recording, but a story, rewritten each time we revisit it. The dawn offers this same alchemy. The storms of your past, failures, heartaches, shames, do not disappear. But in the light of presence, they soften. A missed opportunity becomes a turning point. A betrayal becomes a lesson in boundary. A loss becomes a lens for love. Here is the secret the dawn whispers. You do not find yourself, you unfold. Like the wildflower, you are not a thing to be perfected, but a process to be lived. The child who loved stargazing, the teen who journaled in angst, the adult who forgot how to cry, they are not ghosts. They are your roots, your stem, your petals. Together, they bend toward the light. Close your eyes. Feel the sun on your skin, warm, insistent, alive. This is not a metaphor. It is an invitation. The dawn asks only this: what will you do with your one wild, unguarded life? Amir still carries scars. Some days the old fears return, but now he greets them like old acquaintances, knowing they too belong to the mosaic of his becoming. The river from part 1 flows here, wide and slow. The cave from part 2 hums in his art. The storm from part 3 dances in his brushstrokes. And the mirror from part 4? It hangs in his studio reflecting not a man, but a galaxy. The day you stop running is the day the universe leans in, breathless, to witness what you'll do next. Sleep deeply now. Tomorrow is not a blank page, it is a canvas, and you are both the artist and the art. Rest. The dawn will wait for you. Will wait.